Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Keith Garcia, Artistic Director of the FilmCenter and founder of CinemaQ. Uh, Thanks for watching No Straight Lines, The Rise of Queer Comics. We're very excited to be doing a Q&A after this film right now with the director of No Straight Lines, and that would be Vivian Kleiman. Hello, Vivian. How are you doing?
Hi, Keith. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course, joining us virtually from another place, but uh, maybe next year we'll be in person. We'll get you back here in person for something, and that'll be nice to see. So let's talk about the film at hand. To me, this is a very epic documentary. This world of queer comics uh, is far bigger than I think most people, including queer people, have ever kind of like understood. I think me growing up, I knew of a couple little published queer comics, and I grew up with like Alison Bechdel's Dykes to Watch Out For and Stuck Rubber Baby, and even had a faint memory in my like youth of the Brown Bomber, but never understood the queer context of it until obviously I got older and came out myself. How did you come to this subject matter, and what is, I know this, there's a book first that came out of this. What was your connection to the book, which was more of a just a showcasing these queer comics of history, less than a history lesson, which of course the documentary, that's its main goal.
Right. And that's a very complicated question, too. The notion of starting with something that was originally a book, kind of a series of like 70 images of queer comics, actually worked by about 70 artists, just kind of collating them together into one publication. And the film obviously was striving for something very, very different. The genesis of the project was that, yes, I, like you, was familiar and loved Alison Bechdel's Likes to Watch Out For, and knew of Rupert Kennard's work and The Brown Bomber. But I wasn't really a comics person per se. I got approached by a colleague of mine, Greg Sirota, and a friend of his, Justin Hall, the editor of that anthology, No Straight Lines. And they asked if I wanted to get involved in doing a film on the subject. And I said, well, it's an interesting subject, but I'm not an expert. And they said, wait, you don't have to be an expert. Just like maybe go and attend this conference. There's going to be the world's first ingathering of queer comic book artists in New York. That was in 2015. And so I went. And Keith, I was completely stunned by what I saw. I walked into this conference main room, and there was this young person with chartreuse dyed hair, all decked out in all kinds of fun, non-normative ways of presenting oneself in the world. Totally delightful. Engaged in conversation with this older guy, balding head, wearing an Ivy League button-down collared shirt, starched, striped shirt, and complete antithesis to the young person. And they were together and they were engaged. And then around them were all these other people of the entire spectrum of queer life. And I thought to myself, there's something going on here. And then I attended the conference. I got to hear the stories, and I was hooked.
Yeah, that does sound like that would be like nicely overwhelming to just be like, whoa, there's just so much all of a sudden. Well, I guess given that you kind of came from not having a ton of knowledge beforehand, and I mean thrust into this, how did you begin? Where did you begin with tackling this history, and where did you feel was the important place to start?
Yeah, really key question for me personally as a filmmaker. The kind of stuff that I do and the reason I'm involved in this crazy world of documentary filmmaking is to try to make a difference. I guess you could say I'm a propagandist at heart, but my thinking about how you reach people and how you influence people and how you get them to feel receptive to new ways of thinking is not by being didactic, not by arguing or not presenting a good rational, argument, but it's through the heart. So my approach to filmmaking is to be as a good storyteller as possible. I'm looking for stories that have emotional resonance. So my approach was to select a few people, a few artists that the viewer could get to know a little more intimately. Ideally, it would have been around 3 artists, but that's kind of small given this whole range of kinds of people that I was describing earlier. So I expanded it to 5 artists. It still allowed me, it's not a way to really get to know the details of a person's evolution as an artist and what makes them tick. But I was able to, they're such great storytellers that I was able to accomplish my goal of reaching the viewer as much as possible, first on an emotional level, and then let their questions and thoughts and ideas follow, and hopefully they can go, the viewer can go and explore other issues and questions that come up. But I don't need to provide information and be didactic. That's kind of my approach to filmmaking. And hopefully the viewers have enjoyed, people listening to watching this discussion now have enjoyed the experience, and maybe we'll go out and do a little more reading about queer comics.
I really enjoyed that, on top of the main subjects and their history, that the storylines kind of flow with the voices, the talking heads of new queer artists, who obviously we're not going to go into their work necessarily, but just know that the path has been paved for them. And so because of that, they're in front of your camera being like, oh, well, my experience with this historic artist was this, but then we're like, oh, but who are you? Like, okay, let me write your name down. I wrote, what your comic series is. After this film, I'll definitely look at you as well.
Yeah, and there's this whole world of artists out there that even the so-called experts are not familiar with, because the world of comics has exploded with the internet and web comics. It's just an amazing universe, and the ability to bring people together from all around the globe is what I really love about the comic scene now.
Did you find it was easy to get a hold of everyone, the main subjects that you wanted to talk to with this film, and their attitude? How is their attitude towards being featured in a documentary about their comic?
Well, one of the main themes of the film is about the community of artists. And it's one of the things that really impressed me, because it's contrary to the stereotype that I had. The artist is a curmudgeonly, antisocial kind of person who wants to be left alone in their studio. And these are folks who really enjoy one another, enjoy connecting with one another, enjoy sampling each other's work in their own work. And the artists get a tickle. Alison Bechtel, said that when she sees echoes of her own, little images in other people's work, she kind of chuckles. It doesn't elicit that reflex of getting a lawyer and suing. It's a very different sense of connection and building on each other's ideas and images. And so actually everyone was eager to be involved. And as I said before, the challenge was to make a selection when there were so many wonderful people that deserve to be in the spotlight.
Yes, otherwise you'd have a 20-hour documentary.
Yes, Keith, and if there's a funder out there willing to pay for it, I'm willing to do it.
I mean, I smell a Netflix series that could be very interesting. Who did you get close to any particular artists and their story? Did any of them particularly touch you as to the story, and also just sort of like where their place in history kind of came from? Like, who really got you with their tale?
Yeah, well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to dodge that question, because truly it's like asking the parent who loves all their 5 kids to pick the one.
That is true.
They're all so different. But I can say that I knew Rupert Kennard before I was thinking of doing a film. I knew him when he lived in Oakland. And I'm not giving anything away because people have seen the film, but I knew him before his accident. And so for me, on an emotional level. I hadn't seen him since the accident. And when we got together that first time, we both cried, and it was a very emotional reunion. But yeah, they're all such amazing people. And I guess I would have to say that one of the surprising stories in the film for me was probably with Howard Cruz, a guy who was raised in Alabama, raised in the South, coming from, farm country, and expectations were minimal. And certainly there was no expectation from his background of anyone in the family becoming a professional artist. And yet he had a vision, and he followed that vision, and ultimately it led him to become known as the godfather of queer comics. And I think that story of having the passion, of having encouragement from parents even, to follow that passion is one of the key themes that I hope will resonate with viewers, especially with young viewers, because we feel like we've arrived in terms of equality, in terms as queers in this world. We have gay marriage, we have this, we have that, but the rate of attempted suicide among queer youth is 3 times higher than that of the general population, and I find that deplorable. And I'm hoping that by doing a film about queer history through the vernacular of queer youth comics, that it might inspire young people to find, voice in doing comics themselves, or something the creative process. So I think Howard's story of going from, Alabama to successful guy in New York is quite poignant for me.
And that is one of the really great stories in your film. I'm glad that his tale was brought to light. Do you think there's anything, I was going to say, it's not the word, it shouldn't be bad. How do you feel about current modern, like if we take like Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and there seems to be, like, there was just recently an announcement today that Robin, the character of Robin of Batman and Robin, canonically is bisexual now. That it was an announcement from DC that in the latest stretch of issues of his comic that he's bisexual. Do you feel that this kind of maybe it's a querying over of comics is very beneficial to the basic picture of visibility in the queer community and in the mainstream, or does it seem a little pandering to you? What is your tale on that, especially given that the artists you showed us their stories of were unequivocally gay? Like that's the bottom line. Their characters were queer, dealing with their queer issues, versus this other sort of presenting of an aspect of a character that we may have already known ahead of time.
Yeah, well, it's very, very complicated issue. For me, one of the surprises of working in this subject was the idea that, comics aren't just fun things for kids. And in fact, in the 30s, 40s, it was very political and very anti-Germany and anti the Nazi regime, and very, empowering people to make a change. And the notion of, telling history and encouraging people to be activists in the comic, I thought was really outstanding. So I think kind of like this, we're constantly going back and revisiting the past and discovering new ways of interpreting and understanding and being inspired by. So I think I would, rather than going in the polarity, the polar route of either this is good or bad, is it good or bad for us? Or I kind of feel like it's just great to be revisiting and rethinking as an exercise. And sometimes it's a shame that it takes so long for people to accept, people who are different. But yeah, the notion of kind of turning back to history, like the back stitch when you're sewing, you go back a little bit to go forward, to go further. It's, I think, the image that I like to hold on to.
Lovely. You said that, previous to doing this, that Alison Bechdel's Dykes to Watch Out For was you were aware of, and was a popular title with you. Was it how was it to meet Alison and sort of dive into that comic and history, and obviously their new success, with the Broadway play and just all that stuff. Did you fangirl a little bit, or fan person a little bit?
I mean, how long did it take me to find my voice?
There you go.
Well, the thing about Alison is, well, first of all, yes, I used to run to read Dykes to Watch Out For. It was like the first time that I saw myself represented and my world represented in, any kind of image making. It was so talking about all the issues that we were wrestling with, and in my life. And so, and then of course, with the success, as you were saying, of Fun Home, going on New York Times bestseller list, the Time magazine cover, it's just kind of like, the harbinger of, not the harbinger, the marker of mainstream acceptance of queer comics. So yeah, I was completely intimidated, but she is a very kind and generous and caring person. And in fact, she, at the end of the day of filming, she insisted on, actually it was end of the first day when we arrived, just kind of location scouting. She insisted on cooking dinner for the crew, and she just, and this is up in her mountain house in Vermont. So she's just a terrific person whose success has not changed her heart. In fact, she's as surprised about her success as anybody else and delighted with it.
Yeah, down to earth is definitely what I seem to get from your film for her, which is really fantastic. And yeah, can't wait for more stuff from Alison.
Yeah, by the way, she has a new book that just came out in May, and I highly recommend it. I forget the title right now, but it has to do
that's
with
right.
exercise and art is the theme.
Well, I'll be on the lookout for that, and as I hope many of our other viewers will be. What do you hope viewers really take away from your film after these credits, after this Q&A? What do you hope that they leave the theater with, and maybe an action that they can go do beyond just watching this?
Great. For me, as I was saying, as a filmmaker, my goal is really to grab people in the heart and encourage and have them walk away with more questions. I don't want to create a film that has answered everything. I hope that people will be inspired to kind of like go further, explore more about one of the artists, or to think about perhaps they're inclined to take an online class, which is readily available now. So yeah, I really would encourage, I really hope that the film would inspire questions in the viewer and a sense of connection with other people, that it's entirely possible and very gratifying. So.
Yes. What's next for you after the festival run of this, and hopefully a theatrical or a broadcast of the film? What's next on your plate?
Well, there's a lot of work yet to be done on this film. And at the same time, the way that I'm able to support myself is by doing a lot of freelance work. So I've been lucky to be a story, excuse me. I've been lucky to be a story consultant on some projects, like a series for Showtime, I think it was, on the Wu-Tang Clan. That was very, very successful, I think. And I'll be doing some more work with that company. And I am delighted to report that I received, just prior to COVID, I was awarded an artist fellowship that will get started at the end of this year. So my original idea for that project, I think, is going to change due to COVID. My ideas have shifted, but they're not yet formed in a specific film. So stay tuned. I'll keep you posted, Keith.
Awesome. And can't wait to see the final form of No Straight Lines, where that ends up reaching its ultimate apex, and looking forward to your next project. So
Well,
thanks
thank you so
for
much.
talking to me today. And viewers, like I said, No Straight Lines, the Rise of Queer Comics. This is Director Vivian Kleiman. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you at the next film.
Thanks for having me, Keith.